we as human beings, we cannot affect the natural order. And certainly it remains that way when we pass on into the next plane of existence. We cannot manipulate anything that is heavy. So when you have a refrigerator or a washing machine go ripping across the room, which I've had in cases, we're not dealing with Aunt Betty or Uncle Frankie. We're dealing with something that is evil and very powerful.
This is an emergency broadcast. This is not a test.
What's up? We're back. The Dad's Doomsday Guide podcast is here. After a 9-month, maybe a year hiatus, we are back. And yeah, you might have deleted us from your podcast little list, because, there's no shortage of podcasts to listen to, especially like paranormal stuff, weird stuff, the UFO stuff. It's just everywhere. So yeah, you might have not missed us, but we missed you. So we're back and we're going to have more episodes. It just came to a point, around the holidays where I was just like, I need some time to spend with my family and not have my head buried in the computer, stressing out about trying to find a guest or do some editing or get an episode up. And then YouTube, you start getting punished. The algorithm punishes you for not posting, for not engaging, and your views start dropping, everything else. Maybe not for the real big accounts, but for me, because we were like, we were steadily growing. But it's just like, man, it's just ridiculously hard to keep up with that. And it's a lot of work. And I just got tired and I get annoyed because I'm not someone who wants to be on a computer all the time. I already am. But like having my head in a phone, trying to figure out what teasers to cut, all that stuff. Because I grew up without some of that when I was a young kid. We didn't have computers yet. It was like 80s and 90s, so it was like just bridging over to all the tech and the online stuff. And now it's like YouTubers and like, fame chasers. And yeah, I just was like, I don't want to do that. Like, I just don't care enough to sacrifice the time of the real world to have my head buried in a phone to hope I get another subscriber or anything like that. Like everybody wants to be validated. Everybody wants to do something creative, right? Whether you're a comedian, you're a writer, playing music, whatever you're doing, you're performing or whatever you're showing to other people, even if it's like, I don't know, nuts and bolts work, you're engineering something, you're doing research on something. You want to be validated, told you've done a good job, appreciated for the hard work you did. Like that's all normal. But I'm not so driven by that to where I'm going to sacrifice the other stuff, and I don't think there's a point where it's just not healthy. And I think, constantly being disappointed, like if things drop, it's just not good. And you can get sucked into that social media world and you don't think you are because I'm not looking at like, oh my God, this girl's so pretty. Oh my God, I look like her. It's not like that for most people. I think there is obviously a segment of the younger generation who looks at that young kids, like idolizes people. I have to look Instagram model, all that kind of stuff that they've been talked about ad nauseum. But I think for older people or adults, you might be looking at success, money, whatever your niche is, like you're trying to achieve something in that. And you can get an unhealthy kind of relationship with that stuff. And I think it's, to just get off of it. And even like, not even talking about the podcast, but getting off of like news, not looking at Twitter or X now, not looking at social media in general, not looking at what other people are, and just being focused on your own life, your friends, your family, trying to make stuff better around you. Dude, it's like night and day difference. I wasn't saying like, I was like, oh my God, like, everything's horrible. I got to get off. It wasn't like that. It just kind of naturally happened. And I noticed like through those months, I was just like, oh, it's kind of nice not to feel like you're a prisoner or a slave to that machine that you have to constantly feed to get that feedback or to get popular or success or whatever else you're chasing. Anyway, that's kind of a rant. But maybe some of you feel that way too with whatever you're doing. But it's good to get off. It's good to touch grass, as they say. But yeah, we're back. So we'll have more interviews, not a year apart, hopefully. No, we'll get more. But it'll be at a more relaxed pace. We never were a show a week anyway, like an episode a week. It was not possible. Just doing kind of everything myself. And but we'll get more episodes. We'll get people. When we get stuff that's interesting, we'll have people on and keep kind of touching on some of the stuff that not bothers us, but questions we have about the universe, supernatural stuff, whatever it is, we'll still pursue that. So we hope you guys like it. If you have any suggestions, comments, anything that's like that at all, podcast at dadsdoomsdayguide.com, podcast at dadsdoomsdayguide.com. And yeah, today we got a great show. I almost called him doctor. Sergeant Ralph Sarchie, retired Sergeant Ralph Sarchie. He was a cop in New York City for like 18 years, I think. He was also a religious demonologist. He's a traditionalist Catholic, and he would patrol the streets, I think at night, maybe graveyard shift. During the day, he'd investigate cases with the Warrens. If you don't know the Warrens, The Conjuring, all those creepy movies, they're all based off the Warren files. He learned from them. So he learned from some very knowledgeable people, and he is a very down-to-earth guy, a very honest guy. His faith is very strong. So he believes this is real. Spiritual warfare is real. You might not. You might have questions about it. You might be on the fence. Who knows? You might be a big believer. But he was someone very interesting to listen to because he experienced so much over his career. And he wrote the book, Beware the Night. If you guys haven't read this, check it out. It's very good. And they kind of adapted this into the movie, or inspired the movie Deliver Us from Evil, with Eric Bana as the lead, as Ralph Sarchie, and Olivia Munn as his wife. So without rambling much more, let's get straight to the interview. I hope you guys enjoy, and we'll see you next time, possibly in a year. Cheers. All right, Ralph, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I guess for people who don't know too much about you, like I'm just reading your book. I heard of the movie a long time ago, but would you kind of classify yourself as, or I think you mentioned when we talked earlier, is kind of like what title, because people always want to call you something when they have you on. Is it a religious demonologist, Catholic demonologist, and kind of your story? How did you get to that point? Because I know you're retired police officer now, so kind of fill us in a little bit about who you are and kind of how you came to be in this line of work.
Well, I worked with Ed and Lorraine Warren, and Ed Warren at the time was the only layman demonologist that the world knew of. So I worked towards the demonology aspect and not the paranormal aspect of the work. But with the religious aspect, which has to be, for lack of any other title, I'm not a professor, I'm not a doctor, or I have no degrees in the area. Religious demonologists seem to be the best descriptor of what it is that I'm involved in, because I do want to be distinguished from the paranormal investigator. I'm not a ghost hunter, and I'm definitely not a demon hunter. So before somebody labeled me one of those, I chose religious demonologist. It's simply an identifier. That's all. Mm-hmm. But I don't go around and say, yeah, I'm religious demonologist Ralph Sarchie. I'm just Ralph,
Before you jump into him, I just want to a quick follow-up with that, because I know we kind of touched on the phone. About the ghost hunters, about the paranormal investigators, do you feel like a lot of that's a sham, that it's used to abuse people, kind of make money off it? Or do you feel like they're just getting in way over their heads and it's just a dangerous thing that's turned into a commercial, get TV ratings type of thing?
All of those explanations can fit, but I see it mostly as people, it's sort of fun to investigate cases. I've had fun in some of the aspects of investigating with Ed and Lorraine. Ed had such a sense of humor. It was sometimes a lot of fun just to hang around with him. But people, they get groups together and they have a common interest, and they go out and they try to investigate. They want to get a TV show if possible. And of course, there's always the money aspect. Everybody is looking for an angle on making money. And I found that there is no way to make money as a religious demonologist. That's for sure. I never charged any of the people that have come to me for help. And till this day, I don't do that. I teach classes, and you have access to the classes through donation, but that's about it, but there's no money exchanged. But my problem is with the folks that they buy these locations that have a reputation as being haunted, and then they charge people to come in and do communications. Mm. with whatever is there. And that's what I have a problem with, because that's getting people hurt.
What made you want to start this on the side of being a cop?
Since I was a young kid, I had an interest in ghosts and the spirit world. I was an altar boy when I was a kid, so I could understand at that young age that there is something more to the ghost aspect, of the paranormal. And there was a point, I was an adult. I was reading one of Ed and Lorraine Warren's books in broad daylight, and it scared the hell out of me. And I remember saying, you know what, there's no way that I would even want to get involved in this. Why would these people even put themselves into a situation like that? I would never want to have to deal with that. And it wasn't until years later that I started to get this feeling that, maybe I should get involved in this. I didn't give it much thought, to tell you the truth, because I was so familiar with the subject. It was when I was able to contact Ed and Lorraine that basically that snowball just rolled after that. From that initial contact, within 4 months, I was actually out investigating cases. And the reason why I wasn't doing it sooner is because I needed to get my daughter baptized before I can enter into the work.
Yeah, kind of diving into this stuff kind of scares me. I don't want to bring something, you don't want to bring something home to your family and your kids. And did you ever worry about that part, or did you ever have that happen?
Well, yeah, I mean, getting involved in cases, I had phenomenon going on, but it wasn't happening when I was around. It was happening when I was out of the house, which added an element of tension between me and my ex-wife, So but my daughters experienced a lot of things. And I don't know if that was such a bad thing, because my daughter's acknowledging, that these things are happening and understanding where they're coming from because they're hearing me speak about it. Listen, I would sit on the phone in the living room talking to people with cases, and I'm asking them questions. And my daughter is, she's just sitting on the side playing with her dolls. And if you know about kids, they got one ear on what they're doing and one ear on what you're talking about. So, the both of them experience things. And although they don't go to church like I want them to go, I don't understand that. You've witnessed these things, but you're not going to church. It's really frustrating for me as a father, and I have grandchildren. So, I never really gave that a whole lot of consideration. Sometimes I'm impulsive. I have an impulsive personality. So once I realize that I have a passion for something, I'm going for it. And I really don't think too much about it until I'm there and I'm in the situation and I say, oh, geez, I didn't expect that to happen. I'm a little different now, but back then when I was younger, that's pretty much the way it was. I knew I was going to work with the Warrens, and, there wasn't anything that was going to stop me.
Do you view kind of being able to see some of this darker side and kind of the opposite of a miracle, like a Miriam apparition or something? You're seeing like the dark forces at work. Do you think that strengthened your faith? And do you think, kind of pointing to your kids, that having witnessed that stuff, because for me, I've always thought like, man, if I saw that stuff, I don't want to, because it freaks me out. But it's like, that would give me more cause, because, people always doubt. They want to see proof that there's a God or some kind of proof that there's an opposite force. And then, oh, this is real. The paranormal, or that element is real. Did that help you in a way of your faith to build it, make it stronger?
Well, like I had said with my daughters, they witnessed this stuff firsthand, and it still didn't give them the desire to go to mass every Sunday. And that's the same exact thing that happened with me. Not saying that I didn't go to mass, but what I'm saying is, as far as my faith is concerned, my faith became stronger only when I got to know more about God. That's when it got stronger. It wasn't the devil that was making my faith stronger. It was God that was making my faith stronger. And I've said this over and over again. I don't look at it as a mistake. I look at it as taking the long way around. Instead of when I first really got involved in the work, when I would start to research, I would research case histories, anything that was written on the devil or written about a haunting, I was reading. I got everything that I can grab. I was reading occult books. I was reading different religion. And it was later on in life that I really put all of that on the side and started to look towards what my faith, what is really about my faith. I sought more understanding from scripture than just the initial interpretation, because there's always something deeper within that scriptural passage. And it was aligning myself with very learned and holy men, Father Malachi Martin, for one, Bishop Robert McKenna, and any priest that wanted to friend me and become a friend. It could have been a brother. It could have been a nun, anyone that wanted to friend me and give me a more deeper knowledge of my faith. You know, I was there. And that's what I recommend. If forget about the devil, learn about God, because once you learn about God, then you know all about the devil. But what's more important is you know who the devil isn't. And that's what I use to defeat him, is to know who he's not. That's his area of vulnerability.
Okay.
Oh, that's good. I didn't even think of it that way.
So don't you, obviously people can get, like you said, it's kind of fun to investigate cases. Don't get obsessed with the devil. Don't get obsessed with the occult. Don't be thinking about it all the time. Is that kind of the line of thought you've had? And you've kind of...
Oh yeah. But I'm going to tell you something. When you become a threat to the devil, he's going to take a special interest in you, and he's going to come after you at your weakest point, because that's how he gets us. We're a fallen nature. We're weak by nature. We can't affect nature the way some people think we can actually affect it. It's ludicrous. So he's going to look for your weaknesses, and he's going to come at you in that area. And could be a cross to bear at times.
Have you had that happen then? I would imagine.
I have it going on right now. That's with every human being.
Mm.
When we lost our dad, you know, there's a certain level of depression that sets in. And, you know, I stopped going to church for a little while. I just recently started going back, you know, for Easter. And I'm sure Scott did the same thing. And you just kind of get angry.
Who'd you get angry at?
Oh, you know, you get angry at, you know, religion. Because my dad was very...
Come on, Tim, say it. You got angry at God.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I was just pissed. You know, it took a little bit to come around and just accept things, you know, and
I think it was just hard watching him pray, watching him say the rosary, watching him do all these things. And he still just got like eaten away by cancer in like the worst way. And just watching that happen to him, it was like, oh man, there goes our hero, you know? So yeah, there's an element of anger and all that
but what's his reward?
Yeah.
You're angry because God took him to heaven?
Yeah.
Yeah, when you think about it in that light.
Would you rather God gave him the cancer and let him suffer in this life, which we're all called to do? We're all called to suffer. And, you know, we're supposed to accept every suffering that God gives us. It's a cross. So we live life knowing we're going to die, because we're reminded of this every Ash Wednesday. The church tells us that from dust you came and to dust you'll return. Get your crap together. And you know how you do that? Praying the rosary, going to mass, saying your prayers, just like your father did.
Yeah.
So if the great reward for doing what he did is eternal life, why would you get angry at God for honoring your father, for following his will?
Mm. Yeah, he was that way all the way to the end, all the way. It was the rosary, and we had a priest come over. I mean, he was a strong man. And, you know, it's hard to see that from the outside in when you're looking at everything happening. It was very difficult to accept everything happening. And It's been 3 years. So, I've come around and all these questions and answers, you go through this tailspin of
Grief.
thoughts and stuff, but yeah, but the anger part, anger of God and anger at religion, that was not the right, that was like a knee-jerk reaction to everything. Like, I'm just going to be angry at everybody and everything and religion and God and all this. And that didn't help anybody. It didn't help me.
That's why you need an understanding
exactly
of God's will. And if it's lacking, you can't, number one, apply it into your life. And number two, apply it to the people around you. I watched my mother die for 7 months. I took care of her in our living room because they kicked her out of the nursing home after a month. That was it. The money ran out. All these years. Don't get me started on the healthcare system. It's don't get me started on that.
Horrible.
But my mother suffered a neurological stroke. And for 7 months, me and my sister and everybody else around the family helped take care of my mother. And she used to say to me that, Ralph, I have a lot of pain. And I would tell her, reconcile your pain to Jesus. Tell him that you're willing to suffer along with him and give him your pain. And she would quiet down. But the day that she suffered from her stroke, I tried to get a priest to get to the hospital, and I did. And before that priest got to the hospital, I'm a traditional Catholic, so I called my priest. And I had a traditional Catholic priest come from the parish that I go to the hospital to give her last rites and the apostolic blessing. And before that priest got there, I spent a lot of time in the chapel praying that God would keep her alive, keep her here, do not take her. I begged. Once the priest got there and finished, I went down to the chapel and said, now I beg you to take her, because I didn't want her to linger and suffer. But she did for 7 months. So it was rough, but I didn't turn on God. I didn't get angry at God. I basically prayed. I was praying for him to take her. But I also understood that maybe in his mercy, she needed to linger here for 7 months to atone for her sins. That would have been a lot worse for her to atone for afterward in purgatory. So, I understood these things, and it was rough. Don't get me wrong. It was tough seeing that. But I understood just a little portion of the way God works. And that was able to help everybody move along. So there is a serious sin on the presumption of God's mercy, but knowing what God is asking for in his will is for us to pray that rosary, go to mass every Sunday, if you can physically get there, and pray, and do penances for your sins. Knowing that, you got a much better idea that your father is not suffering anymore, and he's in the place that we should all be striving to get to.
No, it's well said, and it's true. I mean, he wouldn't have wanted us to be like, angry and fit. I mean, no, that's no way to handle or no way to live your life.
Tim, I get mad at God.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get mad at God, but it's, he would prefer that we get angry with him than to pay him no mind.
True.
Because if you're getting angry at him, then you got something going with him. You're connecting to him on some level, on some, at least on a spiritual level, if not a physical level where you're actually praying, going to church. You're connecting with him somehow, and he can work through that connection. He can work through your anger.
True. That is
true. It's an emotion that we have as human beings. He gave it to us, and he'll utilize it for his will when he needs to.
So for you, for people dealing with suffering, pain, anger, you would say just go back, keep kind of, going to church, doing what you need to do and then hopefully over time that kind of realization about what God wants, his will, kind of bubbles up to the surface and you stop trying to fight against the flow of the river, I guess, so to speak?
Well, we're called to suffer. Jesus tells us if we want to follow him, you got to pick up your cross to do it. You can't just, dance your way behind him and think you're not serving him that way. He wants us to pick up our crosses. And when we pick up those crosses, as long as we didn't bring those crosses upon ourselves, we can take the suffering and offer it to God to use the way he wants to use it, meaning he can use that suffering as a grace for the conversion of a sinner. He can use that grace to ease somebody's suffering, because there's always somebody in this world that is suffering more than we are. That's for sure.
That's true.
Look at the other side of the world. Right now we have little children who are digging in mines to get these minerals out of the ground.
Yep.
In order to make our lives better here in the West, and they're suffering. And then, we got somebody whose electricity went out for a half an hour. They're online. Oh, woe is me. I lost power for 30 minutes. I couldn't play with my phone. Our priorities are just all screwed up because most people don't know what our priorities should be, actually.
That's so true. Because to your point about picking up the cross, it's like people just, and I'm not excluding myself here, conveniently forget that aspect of it. Don't want to deal with that aspect of it.
Well, I put myself in with the whole situation. I'm not a saint. I'm not levitating above anybody else. I'm down in the muck and the mire up to my neck with all of you. So, when I say things, it's more for myself than for anybody else. That's the way God wants us to live in this world. He says persevere. Have you heard that word before? Mm-hmm. Persevere till the end. He didn't say become perfect. He said persevere in your quest to become perfect. As long as you keep trying and you don't give up till the end, he's going to see that. Even though you have not become victorious in whatever the situation is, at least you've kept trying and you never gave up. And that's good enough, as far as I'm concerned.
Like, what do you think of this whole, because I feel, and I'm sure Scott does, that religion's like not cool to do. I feel like everybody's like, oh, it's like being Catholic or whatever it is. Like they're shunning that. And now it's more of like, you can do whatever you want. If you want to go do these, I've even seen schools that like, oh, we can't tell a satanic cult that you can't have a club at the school. I've seen that, right? I don't know if you've seen that or not. I forget the school. And it's just insanity, I feel, that's going on. People are losing their minds. And religion is just like being pushed away from society. And then you just see society just collapsing on itself.
You're seeing the book of the Apocalypse, according to St. John, which is the book of Revelations to the Protestant folks out there, that we are living exactly what's written in that book. In the end times, we're told that people are going to turn away from God. There are going to be more people that don't believe in God than there are people that will believe in God. And in the end times, there's only going to be a very, very small amount of people that'll actually be saved. The rest are going to end up in the eternal fire of hell for all eternity. The way they land is the way they'll stay for all eternity. And, I see everything happening the way Father Martin had told me it was going to happen. Now, over the course of those years, as I was learning, my most pressing question was, when? When is it going to happen? Am I going to see it? Are my children going to see it? Are my grandchildren going to see it? And the only thing that, could not be foretold is the time frame, because there's no time frame in the spirit world. So it can't be measured on how long of a time we have before that possible event comes about. Now, pretty much everything we see going on right now in this day and age is geared and spearheaded towards one event, and that's the Antichrist event. And the way I see things happening, the United States needs to fall as the sovereign great nation that it is. It has to fall as the nation that God has blessed. We're moving away from that. Like you said, people are moving away from that. God isn't moving away from us. We're moving away from him. And we're creating a void. And that void will be filled with only one other being, and that's Satan. So we're putting Satan between us and God. And when we suffer from the ramifications and the fallout of that, people are going to blame God for it, when it is, in fact, their fault. You can't blame God for the things that we do. We have free will. So the whole entire world is going to fall into war, famine, disease, decay, and we're going to look for a savior. And the Antichrist will rise on the scene, and he's going to be perceived as something like Jesus Christ. He's going to look very similar to him. Our portrayal, we have a Shroud of Turin, and they've computer generated pretty much what Jesus Christ looks like. Mm-hmm. So we're going to see a being that's going to look very much like what we believe Jesus Christ looks like. And he's going to have the solutions. He will perform miracles. He will have great power, just like Jesus did. Not the same kind, but you got to understand that when Lucifer rebelled against God, he lost only his supernatural graces. He didn't lose his nature, his power. It's preternatural. It's the opposition of supernatural graces. It's preternatural, but he still has a lot of power. He can manipulate the natural order that God instituted. He's outside of it. So he can manipulate our world around us. Not 100%. He's not omnipotent. He's not almighty, not like God. But he still has a great power, and he's going to perform these miracles, and people are going to follow him. They're going to willingly follow him. He's going to be very appealing to women's eyes. He's going to be very appealing to probably your beta males. They're closest to the women that I've ever seen. And he's going to appeal to the manly man because he's able to do that. And then eventually he's going to show who he really is, and people will out and outright follow him. Those who oppose him will be persecuted.
Have you seen? Sorry, Scott, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so a lot of people have a positive view about, oh, we can turn this ship around. You don't believe that's possible, and then we're kind of...
No, I didn't say that.
Okay, so there's still a chance.
Well, this is the direction we're heading in.
Uh-huh.
You know, we are promised by the Blessed Mother. In the Fatima apparition, she said that, unless the Pope and all the bishops of the world consecrate Russia to her Immaculate Heart, we will have wars, and we will have chastisements, we'll have famine, we'll have all of these negative things coming down upon us. But she did say that in the end, her Immaculate Heart will triumph, and we will have a time period of 50 years of peace. So I have a great hope that is going to happen, but there's not a guarantee. She's telling us what her son requests of us. He's going to judge us.
It's very well put. Going back to the not paranormal, but your investigations, did you ever, I was reading, I've been working so much. I've read like half your book. I just haven't been able to cram it all in. I was trying to, but then I get called to something. And
wait, you were listening to it at work? Wait, what? I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I throw it on the car and the audio.
Where do you think I wrote it? At work.
There's so many things you can do at work. It's amazing.
Yes, there is.
Did it scare you at all? Do you get like, man, this may be over my head, or I mean, because you're just fighting something that one can't see. It's spiritual, which is, I mean, I know you have, God on your side and all, and that's, but it's still scary, like there's still something terrifying about evil, and in that respect, especially something that we don't encounter every day. Like a bad guy on the street, yeah, whatever. Okay. It's scary in a different way, but you can physically fight it. Like I can tackle you, I can punch you, I can throw handcuffs on you. So anyway, my question is, do you get scared?
Are you asking me if I did those things, Tim? Well, I don't recall. I just don't recall. Well, listen, the case that you're referring to, I had an incident in that basement, and it was the only incident that I've had in all my years in the work. And I do think that God allowed that to happen to me is to make sure that I remained humble and I didn't overstep, my authority, basically. And it was something that left, a lasting impression on me, but it wasn't enough to knock me off the path that I was called to be on. And as my faith grew, the fear subsided greatly. I don't have any fear. I could go into any situation and I'm not going to be afraid. What's the worst that can happen to me? I could be killed. Well, then I go to heaven, So that's not a threat to me, actually. I'm not afraid to lose my life. So, that's not a fear that I have. Anything negative that would happen to me would be the will of God. So I would have to align myself with that. And I would use the suffering, and offer it up to God. As long as I didn't do something that brought the suffering on myself. A mistake is a mistake. But to willfully do something to bring suffering upon myself is not something that I can utilize. The fear factor is really, it's not something that I even consider.
Because the demons or the evil, it would prey on fear, right? I mean, I think it likes when you're scared.
Anger, fear.
So that begs the question then, what I've had two exorcists tell me, one told me they can't read your minds. Another one told me another person said they could, I think. How do you come down on that? How do they know all these intricacies about you?
Well, they'll only know what God allows them to know. But the angelic choirs cannot read a person's heart, meaning they don't know what motivates you, so they can't read your mind unless God allows them to do that. So they watch your actions, and the fruits of your actions reveal your motivation. And that's how they could tell. That's how they utilize their attacks against you. They're going to use your five senses against you. That's how the devil attacks us, through the senses. And he's going to know what motivates us because he's studied us. And remember, he's very, very intelligent. He doesn't think with a human mind. There are no limitations on his ability to see things the way we have limitations. But both priests are sort of right, or they're right because God can allow these things to happen, and they will know some of the unconfessed sins that you have attached to your soul. They can read some of that, and they know how we've lived our lives, so they can put things together, and they'll know about your motivations.
And that would be I guess, when a possessed person has hidden knowledge too, is that kind of the same thing? They're revealing things to them. And I guess what would be some of the more striking examples? I mean, people always doubt this stuff. They go, oh, it's a lucky guess, or it's like a cold reading or something. And then you go, like, when you read someone like your book, it's like, this is insane. What the things that are documented, like this isn't even remotely, possible for a human being to know. When you were in these rooms with people, was there anything ever revealed where you were like, especially early on when you're still kind of wrapping your head around this whole phenomenon that's happening in front of you, where you were like, whoa, this is kind of crazy? Or were you always kind of I guess, is it kind of similar to a movie where like they're knowing like crazy stuff, or is it more subtle than that and more sinister and more of a mind game?
Well, like I said, it's these unconfessed sins. I was always in a state of grace when I assisted at a solemn exorcism, meaning I had just gone to confession. So there were no sins connected to my soul. I'll give you an example. There was a case out in Sterling, Iowa. I believe it was in the 1940s. It could have been earlier. I'm not 100% sure. And the person, there was a woman, was exercised in a convent, and the nuns were there to assist the exorcist. And one of the sisters there had a sin that she had never confessed, that she concealed, and the demon was privy to it, and he blurted it out to her directly. He didn't blurt the whole sin out, but it actually, it was a sin of a sexual nature. And all she said was, all the demon mentioned was the name of the person. And she understood that the demon knew about her indiscretion when she was a younger girl, before she entered the religious life. But she never confessed it. The demon was able to read that sin. Now, was that God showing his mercy on her to make her realize that she never confessed that sin and it's still connected to her soul and she needs to confess it? I don't know, but God can work that way. But I've been in plenty of exorcisms where there was nothing revealed. There was sometimes some of the investigators would get a little overzealous and the demon would sort of correct them. In a not so subtle way, and it was understood by everybody that was there. And that's why my investigators, I said, if you utter one word to that person during the exorcism, you'll be removed from the church and you'll sit outside, and it'll be the last time you handle a case with me.
So are they trying to like engage it, or were they not personally ready to be in the room with you?
This particular person was engaging it, and the demon sort of let him know to keep his mouth shut. Only the exorcist is supposed to speak during an exorcism. Now, we had an exorcism of a little girl. She was 8 years old. And this was it was highlighted on Hostage to the Devil. There was a documentary made about Father Martin. Mm-hmm. And I worked on a case that he had brought to my attention of a 4-year-old. And it was 4 years later, after Father Martin had passed on, that I got involved in this particular girl's case. And we had an exorcism, and I had a videotape going. As you know, I always tape exorcisms for documentary purposes, so we can show, just in case it goes sideways, we can show a jury what we had done. And it wasn't our word against the prosecutor's word, who would have come after us with all guns blazing, because they don't like this kind of stuff. And she turned to me and addressed the question, and all I did was point to Bishop McKenna. I did not engage her in conversation. Now, the strange thing about it is this: when I first was introduced to her, before the exorcism began, she hid behind her mother. But when the exorcism started, she wanted to engage me now. Oh. So I didn't take it as I was going to be engaged by this little girl, by what was inside of her. And I just pointed to the bishop, and she looked and paid attention to what was going on. And she recited the Magnificat in Latin. Wow. Which is one of the signs that we look for, speaking in a language that the person does not or could not know. I'm 61 and I still can't recite the Magnificat in Latin. I could do the Hail Mary, the Our Father, the Glory Be. I could say certain prayers, but she has no training in Latin. I could produce little 8-year-olds that can speak in fluent Latin or pray in fluent Latin, but they've been trained since the first grade.
Mm-hmm.
She was Novus Ordo. She's mainstream Catholic Church. She didn't know Latin. She wasn't trained in Latin. But here she was at 8 years old, speaking it, and that's what we needed.
Tim, you can jump in. I just want one follow-up with the filming and the videos. And so I've spoken to a couple exorcists and they say, oh, we don't film. I guess it's kind of a two-part for you. So you actually have the, I guess, supernatural responses or these things from people on video. And then I guess the second part would be, did you ever receive any pushback from, I know you're close with the priests you work with, so maybe I would imagine everything's fine, but anybody ever say, hey, you shouldn't be filming this? Or did you ever get any, because I feel like it's so smart to have that for evidentiary purposes that no one would be like,
who's going to do that? Who's going to say anything about that?
So why are they?
My video camera. It was my videotape. And it was my case.
So it's funny because on YouTube comments, I'll be like, why isn't there video evidence? And it's like, for you, you're saying there is. But some priests, I'll be like, oh, is there video evidence? And they'll be like, no, because we can't film it. So I guess, so it's because you're outside of the church, you're not a priest, that it's fine, I guess.
That's the rules of the Second Vatican Council.
Mm-hmm.
I don't operate under the Second Vatican Council. I operate under the traditional church. Bishop McKenna and Father Martin wanted a record of what was going on. They received copies of it. I retained my copy. And, if say we did an exorcism for a woman and then later on she says they sexually assaulted me, everybody there would have got arrested.
Exactly.
Well, but wait, let's go to the videotape. Did we sexually assault anybody here? So it is not unheard of for the devil to utilize our justice system against people that are fighting against him. Look at the tort laws in this country. All you got to do is look at somebody cross-eyed and they could sue you. They pull you in. They're canceling you. They're calling you all kinds of names. You're a racist. You're a homophobe. You're a xylophone. Whatever the hell it is.
So in response to those people who doubt that there's video evidence, there is video evidence. You have it.
Yeah, but you know
of
what?
Exorcisms.
With the exception of maybe one or two things, it's not going to be something that's going to change the curiosity seeker's mind.
Mm.
I could show you a videotape of a head splitting open, eyes that are no longer human, blood dripping, spit dripping from the mouth, turning into blood when it hits the shirt. I think there's a copy of it around on the internet somewhere. I received this exorcism from Ed Warren. And he told me never show it in public. I used it for training purposes. As a matter of fact, it scared the living crap out of Eric Bana and Edgar Ramirez. Those two guys couldn't sleep for about a week. After I showed them that one thing, Olivia Munn, from what I understand, she broke down in tears just seeing a little bit of it. There is such great suffering in it. That's the worst part of the whole thing. It's the suffering that the poor man went through.
Man. That's the thing I don't get with people is you'll ask people, hey, do you believe in possession? Do you believe in evil? Do you believe in all this? No, I don't. Well, would you sit in an exorcism and watch one? No, I don't want to. And it's just like, it's a weird disconnect to where they
I wouldn't have them there.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
That part of it. Curiosity seek is permitted. This isn't a spectator sport. There's somebody's soul is on the line.
Mm.
There's great suffering that goes along with it. And everybody in the room, wherever it is in very, very great danger.
Yeah, it's crazy how, people now, like, it really bothers me with this whole, like, anti-religion and, like, oh, this school can have a Satan club. I'm just like, what? Like, as old as humanity is, as old as religion is, there's so many, I really like horror movies, but there's so many movies out there, including Deliver Us from Evil, The Exorcist, that are based on true events, right? The Conjuring, so forth. And all these movies, obviously, they want to make money. They change the story a little bit.
A little Hollywood hype.
Yeah, like, of course there is. But, like, if you read your book or I read the book The Right as well. It's just insane to me how people can allow a this may be a one-off incident in this one school, but why people are opening the door to, and you even see it in TV shows, like people promote and kind of make light of the whole satanic, this bullshit. And it's to me, I'm not the most informed religious wise, but I grew up Catholic. I know the basic rules of being religious and believing in God, and there's evil and good. And to me, like what you just said, is it's being flipped around and like, oh no, this really isn't that bad. This is fun. And I'm like, man, you're being tricked into thinking that this is nothing. And then by the time you figure out it's something, you're going to have this grip on you and you're not going to be able to let it go. Whatever the evil is, Satan, it's going to have a hold of you because you've just been ignorant. And it's just insane to me that this is a thing and that society is accepting it. Like, oh, it's fine. Oh, you can't say no. I'm like, what? I don't know. I just find it highly agitating that, especially that one incident. And I don't know. It just, to me, it's just very disappointing that human beings are that stupid.
What's the new word that's going around? The members of the ignorati. So, but listen, we're told in Scripture that God is going to send a spirit of error to these people. They're not going to be able to see the truth if it jumped up and it bit them. I don't know why. I don't know why. I'm just praying that I'm not the one that receives this spirit of error, and I remain in the right spiritual state to serve God's will. That's what it, no matter what goes on, no matter what happens in this world, no matter how empty our bellies are, we have to continually serve God's will. We need to persevere till the end in order to receive what God promises us, eternal life. But Tim, you had said something about, the people are just going along with this program, with the evil. And it's simple. They're lovers of evil. Evil in the end times will be good, and good will be evil. You have to make a choice. Yep. You have to exercise your free will on what direction you're going to go in. And you say, well, how the heck is this happening? Archbishop Fulton, the devil is most powerful when he is denied. True. If you don't believe in the devil, then how could you possibly fight against him? You don't even know who he isn't. But like I said, what's more important is you got to know who God is in order to be able to align your will with his will and fight against the enemy, which is not of flesh and blood, but of spirit. We're warned this. We're told this. And the devil is very, very good at convincing people that he does not exist and everything is okay.
What Tim was saying about it kind of being deceptive, one of the parts of your book that I thought was really interesting and was about Satanists and how they're kind of the high levels of society, doctors, lawyers, and you were going into crimes that detectives in the past investigated and bones missing and things where you never could quite pit it on people, but the evidence kind of suggested that it was happening. And kind of going along with what Tim's thought was, is how it's kind of, it's made to seem like it's not a big deal, like it's not happening, like it's not bad. I've said people, oh, it's satanic panic all over again when you mentioned the word Satanist. Can you talk a little bit about that and about, I guess, the levels of society involved in that and how it's kind of masked to be like, oh, it's not an issue, it doesn't exist. This is just a myth that was conjured up by, religious zealots.
You have these different types of Satanists. And you have a wide array of occult practices out there. And you have the dabblers. That's just these kids that pick up a book and start dabbling in the cult. They call themselves Satanists. I've dealt with them face to face. You have another group that are your organized or your generational Satanists, which possess the biggest problem because you don't know who they are. They're very, very effective, and they follow their religion just as fervently as a traditional Catholic would follow his. The way we kneel down and we pray to God, they kneel down and they pray to their devil, to Satan. And they follow what he says, what his tenets are. What is it? Do it thou wilt. That is the whole of the law. Aleister Crowley. Do whatever makes you feel good. Do it. That's like the hippies of the 60s. Do what you want, right? That's when the breakdown of society actually came, was in the 60s with the hippies. Now all of those hippies are in charge. Mm. The ones that were saying, fight the power, are now the ones with all the power, and they're doing everything they can to oppress the people in this country, in this world, for a matter of fact. This is not just an America problem. This is a worldwide problem. See, the devil doesn't just want America. He doesn't want the seat of, or the mantle of the presidency. He wants the chair in Rome. He wants the chair of St. Peter that's in Rome. You know, the chair that Bergoglio sits on right now? That's what he wants. He wants to be the head in Rome.
So you would say it's more widespread, this kind of Satanism, than people want to give credit to? And then, because when you see a lot of these, even in musicians, you see all these, like, people kind of deem them conspiracy theories, where you see kind of satanic imagery in like concerts and all these kind of like, you know, social media and these celebrities. Do you think there's some shred of truth to that, or how do you perceive those things when they come through?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I see it. You know, there are some people that are very good at pointing out the symbolism. Mm-hmm. And everybody's got symbolism, you know, even back, look at the cavemen. They were drawing pictures on the caves. They had this symbolism. So we have ours. You know, it seems to be in human nature. The Catholic, I have a scapula, you know. We have a belief in something with this, but it is a symbol. When people see this and they know what it is, they know I'm a Catholic. You know, I have a tattoo of Jesus on my arm. They know I'm a Catholic. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. So you have these people, they do the same exact thing. And it's not only just Satanism. You have voodoo, you have Santeria, you have the 7 African powers, or the Orishes. They're demons. They're simply worshiping their demon. The way us Catholics pray to Saint Michael, the archangel, they pray to their demons, which came from the choirs of angelic spirits.
Tim, if you want to jump in, I just have one little follow-up. Have you ever seen, maybe you can kind of break this down for me, do people, when they get possessed, are they possessed? Is Satan doing the possession? Is it an individual entity? Or is it like through him? Like, I'm trying to understand, like, kind of the hierarchy. Are they individual entities? Does Satan ever come in and get somebody?
Satan doesn't possess anybody. The only time that the devil will possess a human is in the Antichrist. It's the only time and the closest that the devil can walk in human form on this earth is through the Antichrist. He is not possessing any other person. I know a lot of times, you know, during an exorcism, the demon will claim to be the devil, or, you know, a high-ranking demonic spirit. It could possibly be. I've heard demons refer to themselves as Judas. Is it possible? Yeah, it is possible. Do I doubt it? Yeah, I do doubt it. I don't believe that there are any human beings possessing another human being, even the ones that are in hell. But as far as the devil actually possessing somebody, it might have happened here and there through history for maybe a short period of time. I don't really see that happening. The devil is not permitted. He's not unloosened yet. He will be, but he's not permitted to be loosed upon this earth.
I know with police, like, I've encountered some weird calls where, you know, there's a lot of mental health now everywhere. I mean, but we had a recent one, and I think she was probably crazy, but it was one of the weirdest calls I've had. I'll sum up quick because I want to get to my question of you, but she ended up crashing a car, running into a street, trying to get hit by a car, got hit by a car. Then she had to be tackled, then handcuffed. Then was just screaming a bunch of, really wasn't in her right mind. Really wasn't, nobody felt like she was on any drug. Then got a knife out of her pocket, tried to stab my partner. Then we got her on the gurney. They were shooting her up with all these medications to calm her down. It didn't work. They got her to the hospital. They 5150'd her there. Like 15 hours later, they released her so I could transport her to jail. She ended up fighting me again with the same crazy amount of strength that she had in the street. She's like 110 pounds, maybe 5'5". So as I'm driving over to the jail, I don't really know anything about this person because I could never get anything out of her. It was just, I need to go to this meeting. And even the psychologist was like, I don't know, man, she's not all there, but she's good enough to not be here. I'm like, oh, what does that even mean? So at this point, I'd been up like 24 hours. I was just exhausted. And I go to the jail and she's staring at me in the rearview mirror. And, I've watched a ton of horror movies. So The Ring, where the black hair is in front of the face and they're just staring through you. And multiple people said this, but she would stare through you, like through your body. It was the strangest thing. And I've dealt with a lot of, mental health, like I'm sure you have, every cop has. But she just stared at me the whole time we drove over there, the 30-minute drive. We get to the jail and then she changed her whole attitude, super calm. Everything's fine. And I'm just like, yeah, it's mental health, whatever. It was one of the weird, stranger. They said maybe she was having a manic episode. They really don't know. But my question to you is, did you ever, like while working, experience something and be like, man, this is not mental health. This is something else. And then have to kind of like switch gears and go off into the realm of your expertise, or no?
I've had the complete opposite.
Okay.
I've had two individuals. We arrested a prostitute one night, and we had to bring in 3 prostitute arrests, not just one. So sometimes we had to have the prostitute in the back of the van and then go out and get the others. Right. And one was being a real pain in the ass. She kept yelling and screaming. I kept telling her to shut up, shut up. And then she goes, I'm possessed. And I said, shut the F up. And all my cops in the van started to laugh because they knew,
Yeah.
Shut the F up. And that was the end of it. There was no more I'm possessed. And then another time I got called to a Sweet 16 party. And the girl, the Sweet 16-ette, was laying in bed, flopping around, claiming that she was possessed. The family was claiming she was possessed. And I just went over and I grabbed her and I pulled her out of bed and I said, knock the bullshit off. And she was it was her party and she was going to cry if she wanted to. And that was it. It was a house full of people. The chihuahuas were barking and bouncing off the walls, and everybody kept putting the rice and beans in my face. Here, you want a plate? No. Tell the party girl to knock it off now. We got better things to do with our time.
That's hilarious.
So, there was only one instance where I was called to go to a hospital. My officers knew exactly what I was involved in. So they called me to go to the hospital, and I got to the emergency room, and the mother of I think he had to be about 25, 26, had some kind of a psychotic breakdown, and he was claiming that he was possessed, and he was tearing his Bible apart, if I remember some of the things he was doing. And I went into there was a cubicle. There weren't rooms, it was cut off by curtain. And I had gone in there and I introduced myself to him, and he wouldn't look at me. I says, your mother is concerned. She said that you might feel that there is something wrong that you can't deal with. And he wouldn't look at me. He didn't respond to me. He wouldn't look at me. So I said, okay. And I left and I gave the woman my card. And I said, if he ever expressed a desire to receive help, or at least somebody to look into his problem, give me a call. and I never heard from them again. So that was pretty much the only time. Other than that, I really, I never experienced anything that would give me pause to believe something was amiss in that realm. But I didn't go around as a demonologist when I was working. I was a cop. That's what I was doing. I don't see the devil under every rock.
Right.
I don't see every weird situation as, a preternatural event or a supernatural event. I'm looking to debunk it at that particular point.
Right.
I guess along those lines, for the gentleman who I guess you never heard from in the hospital, there's one in your book where the mom who was thinking about harming her kids, and you talk about how she went to get help, and then she ended up seeing you. I think one exorcism was done, correct me if I'm wrong, and then you never heard from her again. How common, because it was actually kind of sad, like you were talking about, there's like a victim there. How common is it that it fails? There's a lot of stuff online sometimes with responses to some of the Exorcist videos we post. Like, all you have to say is Jesus' name and it's gone. It's easy. I don't know why these Catholics are making it so hard. So
not.
Can you talk a little bit about that, about the difficulty, and then how often people drop off and don't follow through with it?
Listen, I've seen a lot of these phonies out there. They're all full of it. You're not dealing with a genuine case of possession. That's for sure. It happens. There are some people that I've worked with for a number of years, and there was no ending to the possession. That's the dangerous part. And we don't know why. Is it something that we missed? Was the person not being totally honest with us, that, we weren't able to approach it from the right direction? There are a whole bunch of different factors. And a lot of times we're dealing with a person who does have, in fact, a legitimate mental illness. The problem is that sometimes demonic possession will manifest itself as a mental illness. And that's a difficulty. It's a fine line. And, you have to be very careful when you're dealing with a person's psychological makeup. Some of them are very fragile. And, you do not want to take a person who is not possessed and make them believe that they are. It's a horrible way or thing to do to a person. So you got to be really, really careful. You need to have a psychological and a medical makeup on these, especially in this day and age. For some reason, Father Martin had said to me years ago, I don't remember the reason why we're talking, probably about that case that we were dealing with. He said to me that you're going to see an uprising in charges of possession. And I was just surprised. I was taken aback by that. And I said to him, why? Why would that happen? He goes, there's a chastisement towards the parents for them not teaching their children about their creator, not taking them to church, not getting them baptized, letting them run life the way they want to run life instead of the way God wants us to run life. And I never asked them how. I asked them why, and that was it.
So would mental health, individuals who are suffering from like mental issues, be the ones with the worst outcomes when it comes to exorcisms, if they're having something on top of that, or it's causing it itself? Would those be the ones where you're like, that those are the toughest to fix?
It's difficult to even discern that it is possession. It takes some time. There's a lot of interviews, there's a lot of praying. There's a lot of little things that a religious demonologist will do to maybe get a reaction from the demon if it is possession. But it manifests itself as a mental illness, which masks, it cloaks it. So you don't think, hey, this person is possessed, they're mentally ill. But there are things that we look for that give us telltale signs that we're dealing with a possession.
A coworker of mine, good buddy, good guy, he was basically a few months, maybe a year ago, was saying that his house, he lives alone, his kid's older. He was home alone, and the door, the kind of door bumper, when you hit the door, it's a little spring and you can hit it and it makes that sound.
Yeah.
He said those were going off in his house during the day. in the evening, and he's like, what? Nobody was home. He went to sleep. He felt like somebody laid in his bed, and he went and moved real quick. Nobody was there. He woke up. He sent me some pictures too with scratches like on his neck, on his arm.
How many scratches?
Yeah, I know the Holy Trinity. The 3, I saw 2 in one picture. I don't know if there was 3 in the other. I have to go back and look at the pictures again. He would smell cigarette smoke when there wasn't any. He would hear footsteps down the house. His roommate, when he was out of town, his roommate was home and said, hey, were you in your room? And he's like, no, I wasn't home all night. And he had said he heard footsteps up and down the hallway. This guy doesn't lie about this stuff. He's straightforward. He isn't Catholic. So he was asking us a bunch of questions like, man, should I get a Bible? He brought this girl over to do some prayers for him. So he put a Bible in his room. I think he put a crucifix up in his son's room. I was telling him, like, dude, I mean, you
can't fake it.
He's not baptized. What is he doing?
Yeah, I don't know.
So I guess that gets into like the religious relic stuff. Like, can you just throw things up there too and like expect it to work?
Like it's a good luck charm. I mean, that's an insult to God, actually.
So what do you think of that? Like, what I know that it's quick what I told you, but what should he do? I mean, I think it's pretty good.
I think he's screwed. And I'll tell you why. Because he's not baptized.
Yeah.
The first thing I would, and I'm active in this. Almost every case that I'm getting now, the first thing I want people to do is go get baptized. I won't work with them until they do. What am I going to wave a magic wand? Yeah, poof. Your problem is gone. You could keep ignoring God all you want. That's not the way it works. So now you got to go get baptized. And once you get baptized, then we can work with you. Now, that's going to take about a year.
Now, are those signs that you see, what I've told you, and those, like what he's experiencing, is that something that you see in cases?
That sounds like infestation, yeah.
How would someone know between like just a haunting, and then maybe this gets into like, can you be haunted by a a demon, something else? Do you, are there ghosts, people like, how do you tell the difference? Is it the feelings? Is it the scratches? Is it because like I've heard footsteps above me in an old house we used to live in, and I was to the point where I got a gun out. I thought there was an intruder. I mean, my wife heard it. Like, at what point is it innocent? At what point do you need to worry?
Human spirits, they can't do a whole lot. We as human beings, we cannot affect the natural order, and certainly it remains that way when we pass on into the next plane of existence. We cannot manipulate anything that is heavy. So when you have a refrigerator or a washing machine go ripping across the room, which I've had in cases, we're not dealing with Aunt Betty or Uncle Frankie. We're dealing with something that is evil and very powerful. We're made up of electromagnetic energy. And, we have tried to manipulate objects through electromagnetic energy. The last experiment that I seen had to be about maybe 15 years ago. This magnet took up a whole entire room, and they were able to levitate a frog. That's about it. Anything heavier is not going to happen. We're not able to harness that type of electromagnetic energy, which is power, within our bodies, but the demonic can actually manipulate it to the point where they can move heavy objects. They could do incredible things. They could dismantle all of the moving parts in your engine.
Jesus. So there's no limit, I mean, what God allows them to do, but in terms of physical actions,
God is their limit.
Okay. So you've seen, can it go up to killing a person? Are there cases like that?
Usually they can have a person kill another person, or that person kill themselves. Okay. They're not going to be able to kill a human being. God is not going to allow that.
Okay.
They can, but God won't allow that to happen.
Like, you're obviously still active now. Have you seen increase or a change, or is it kind of maintain the same in terms of what is going on with people? Or have you seen an increase, like you said, with people that aren't baptized or people that are dabbling more into the occult and so forth?
Back when I first started in the day, I like to call it, back in the day, I would say that 9 out of 10 people that contacted me were already baptized. Now it's the complete opposite. I might get 1 out of 10 people that are baptized.
Wow.
And that is a major, major problem.
So your hands are tied until they make a decision about where they want to go.
Do it. And you know what? I don't hear back from them, meaning they're not doing it. You know what they're doing? They're going to somebody else who doesn't care about that. They don't care. They don't care if you're baptized or not.
Like a psychic or somebody to come and like...
They're not going to be successful. I don't see how.
I don't understand why they wouldn't. If they're experiencing something supernatural or evil or whatever's happening to them, they're, obviously it isn't good, where they feel like they need to contact a demonologist, right?
It's not quite bad enough.
That's wild to me. For me, if I wasn't baptized and I have even what my buddy's experiencing, with the scratches and the person in my bed, I'm getting baptized tomorrow. I'm not going to sit here and deal with that. Because it just seems logical that
people don't want to partake in the religious part of it. But then when something scary happens, and I've had multiple people in the comments section ask, "Oh, if I'm not Catholic, can I get holy water? Where can I get holy water? Where can I bless my house?" So none of that's going to work. Does it put a Band-Aid on it at least, Ralph, until they can get baptized? Or
well, yeah, I mean, as long as they're making that, they've made the decision and they have the intention of getting baptized, it's from that moment that God is going to take them under his protection.
Okay, so it's
they got to follow through, or you're going to wind up in deeper crap if you don't follow through. And people just don't want to have a relationship with God. But when they have this problem, they want to turn to God to help them.
It's like hitting suffering, and once you start suffering, then you start praying. You don't pray when things are good.
It's a crisis, right. Yeah, people start going to church once there's a crisis. Yeah. Once their prayers are answered or they're over the crisis, then they go back to paying God no mind. And he sees this. They're worse. They're worse than a Satanist, actually. They're lukewarm.
Yeah. Yeah. And get caught up in the materialism and buy this, buy that, go to work, buy this. I want this, I want that. Because really, society is just making us work, spend your money, worry about material things, don't give a damn about anything religious, like you said, do whatever you want to make you happy.
Jesus tells us to detach ourselves from things of this world. Detach yourself from the things of this world, meaning have more of a relationship with me and forget about that. All of that stuff that's only temporary. I'm eternal. I'm eternal forever. All of those nice things, the car you have, the house you have, the money in the bank, eventually it all goes away physically.
Yeah.
It returns to the earth, just like our physical bodies do. He doesn't want us to live life in the flesh. He wants us to live life in the spirit, because we're made up of two different elements, physical and spiritual. The physical, it fades away, but the spiritual remains. And if we live our lives with the flesh leading the spirit, we'll never obtain eternal life. We'll perish. We have to align our physical body behind our spiritual body in order to have a better shot at receiving eternal life. It's not guaranteed. I know Jesus hung on the cross for us, so he could defeat death and he can forgive us our sins. But it's not free. You don't just go through life doing whatever you want, knowing, hey, I'm saved. But I can fornicate with 50 different women in the course of 6 months, and it's still obtain heaven. It's not going to happen.
I just want to ask about like holy water and stuff because we're kind of on that. So for someone who is baptized, who is, Christian, Catholic, can they go around their house? Can they say a prayer? Can they try to bless things themselves? Or is that always kind of disastrous because now you're engaging with it? Do they need to call someone like you and a priest?
As long as you're in a state of grace when you do it, there shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
I have a great benefit when I deal with Catholics who are baptized and are actively going to church. I don't even have to deal with going to their house, which I don't really do anymore, or getting a clergyman involved. Just as long as the holy water is exercised and it's not, just a sign of the cross over the water, it doesn't turn it into blessed holy water. There is a 5-minute ritual in the Roman ritual that actually exercises the water and gives it the blessing and the power of the church to actively go up against the demonic.
Would you say holy water is one of the most potent things somebody could use, or are there other things?
Prayer is the most potent.
If someone's not in a state of grace and then engaging in that process, will it just not work, or will you start?
There's a danger to that.
So it'll start engaging you more because it knows weaknesses and start.
You might even get attacked doing it.
Are these people, when you say 9 out of 10 aren't baptized, are they atheists? Are they dabbling in the occult? Are they spiritual? Like, how are they classifying themselves? Or do they not get into that with you?
I don't have many people that dabbled in the occult coming to me. They're going to be utilizing their occult practices for their protection, which isn't going to help them. It's only going to make matters worse. These are just people that don't have time for God. They weren't brought up religious. They don't really know anything about him. They don't go to church or, any kind of services. And then when this problem arises and it becomes active in their life, then they actually start turning towards God. And how do you know that that's not a way that God is calling them? He's allowing this to happen because the demonic don't do anything unless God allows it.
Do you see a difference, or do you think there's a difference when you're fighting this demonic, these entities or whatever, with the prayers you're using? I mean, I don't know. I'm not. Is the Catholic Church, do they fight it the same way as you do, or is there a difference in the way they do it?
They're using an updated version of the Roman ritual, which I don't use because that's used for solemn exorcisms over people. I use the Pope Leo the 13th prayer, which has been modified actually to fit in with a lot of the things that we were coming up against. And you can add to a prayer. You cannot detract from the prayer. You can add to a prayer as long as you're not changing the meaning of the prayer. So, or the main body of the prayer. So I use the Pope Leo XIII prayer, which is in the appendix of Deliver Us from Evil. The prayers that I use are in the book. My methods that I use are in that book. How I go about investigating cases is in the book. And the things that you need to do in order to investigate a case properly as a religious demonologist. Because nobody's going to knight you, with your religious. There's no order. There's a minor order of exorcists in the traditional Catholic Church. I believe the mainstream Catholic Church brought that minor order back because they have a lot of exorcists now. They didn't have them when I first started in this work. There was no there was maybe a handful of Novus Ordo priests. I was working through all traditional Catholic priests.
So I know there's a lot of demonologists out there, like, with that label. Kind of a two-parter. Like, if someone needs somebody and they don't know who they're getting, do you have any way of, when these people are seeking help, vetting someone to know if they're like a charlatan or not?
You got to research.
Okay.
You have to, if you look up a particular person and they say, well, yeah, I'm a demonologist, and there's nothing about that person, then I would have to question that person's authenticity. But if you look back at a demonologist and you see a whole bunch of things, like who they trained with, what religion they are, is there a history of this person anywhere as actually being a demonologist? That's what you're going to look for. Other than that, I know there's a lot of phonies out there, but there's a lot of legit people out there that are demonologists.
For the Warrens, I know we haven't really touched on this very much, but how much were they influential in what you do? Like, I know they have a ton of movies about them and books, and I mean, it's pretty fascinating stuff, but.
Well, I knew them way before the movies came out.
Oh, the one part in your book where you said, "Oh, I just picked up the phone and I called them." I was like, "Whoa, yeah. that's like a different time. You can't call anybody now and talk to them. Whoever they are, you have to go through all these hoops and like try to talk to an agent or something crazy." That was so cool. You could just pick up the phone.
I picked up the phone and Lorraine answered, and I was in her house many times when that phone would ring off the hook. A lot of times she'd say, "Ralph, get that." So I'd have to I'd be talking, I remember when George Lutz from the Amityville case called, and Lorraine says, "Oh, Ralph, get that. Tell him I'll call him back." So I picked it up, and I knew his name was referred to as Lee. So I says, "Hello, Lee. This is Ralph Sarchie. I work with the Warrens. Lorraine is busy. She's going to call you back, shortly. Is there an emergency?" No, I just needed to talk to her and all that. All right, she'll call you back. That was it. So that phone was always ringing off the hook. And a lot of people say to me, "I had a hard time finding you." I'm all over the internet. How could you have a hard time finding me? I have a Facebook page. I have a Twitter account. I'm on Truth Social. My email's out there all over the place. So, I don't hide from people.
I was going to ask about all the not the relics, but all the haunted items that the Warrens kept. I know you mentioned it and you touch upon it in the book. And do I have this distinction correct? So the demon isn't actually possessing the item. It's just they're working through it to get to a person. So when all these things are sitting there, but you're talking about how they still kind of have a connection to that evil entity, maybe that once was in there. I think you mentioned like the head popping off of one of the toys. I guess it was in there. Like how does all that interplay and how that works?
Well, it depends on how the object was utilized. We have contact objects that are cultists. Like the priest, he blesses a crucifix, he blesses a medal, or he blesses the house. The Satanists, they will actually utilize objects with the exact opposite effect. They're cursing the object, and a demon is attached to it. And the demon is the one that carries out the act, not the object itself. So when they're blessed, I bless these objects when I come across with holy water first and then holy oil to negate the contact between the object and the demon. And now the object is basically null and void. The demon is released from that bond it has to that object. That's where the danger lies.
And I think you mentioned Ed said that, or maybe it was him, that you wouldn't destroy them because it could have like a rebound effect on the person.
Yes. There are some. Well, what happens is there's two effects. There could be, if the object is destroyed, a good sorcerer will attach a booby trap to it. That once that object is destroyed, that now becomes in effect. And it can adversely affect the person it was intended for. It can adversely affect the person that destroyed the object. Or it could actually boomerang and go back to the sorcerer himself. That's why they like to put this booby trap on it so it doesn't come back to them. Usually hits the intended target or the person that destroyed the object. Because what happens is you have a physical object. If you destroy it and you change the molecular structure of the object, now that particular demon is no longer bound to that object because it no longer exists.
Oh.
So it's free now to harm the person it was intended to, the person who destroyed the object, or the person who sent it, or all three for that matter. We don't know.
Wow.
So that's what Ed was talking about when it comes to that particular, effect.
Did they learn that from experience, or was that something that was knowledge passed down to them, or did they try to do it early?
Probably that was taught to them by some sorcerer that they had spoken to.
Wow. Yeah,
I talked to those people.
The sorcerers.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. How does that conversation arise? Do you just come across them in the field, or?
Well, sometimes they contact me and we talk.
Oh,
and I'll ask them, hey, how do you go about doing this? Or how about you going that? But there are some that were willing to speak to me, on a level. And there are some people that were involved in the occult and had a conversion, and now they're Christian. So they're more willing to speak with me about certain aspects of their trade.
Are those conversations with the sorcerers respectful? Do they have like an animosity towards you? It's okay.
No, I've been interviewed by Satanists for their podcast.
Really?
Very, very respectful people.
Do you ever go like, what's the I mean, do you get into that with them, or are you not interested in kind of meeting them on that level about why they're doing what they're doing? Or
I'm not interested. I'll answer their questions like I'm answering your questions.
Mm-hmm.
But I won't get into their personal space on why they've done what they've done. The only time that I would do that is if they came to me and said, listen, I need your help. I need help. I want your help.
Okay.
Then I would go into, all right, well, tell me what you've done. I want to know everything. I want to know everything about you. I want to know about your grandparents. I want to know about your mother and father. I want to know about your family members. I'm going to go that far back and that deep into your life if you truly want my help.
Because I have a friend who actually went through he had a satanic, it was like a phase. It was like the heavy metal. It was like I was going through my rebellious phase. I was reading occult stuff and about the devil. And now he doesn't care.
Dabbler.
Yeah, he doesn't care about it at all. Now it was the total like rebellious phase. Do you see more of those people who are inviting you on the podcast, or do you ever get to the point of the serious ones, right? Who are praying?
I have got some, and a lot of them aren't in the United States. They're in the UK. They friend me on Facebook.
Wow.
And I see all their pictures, they're like, and they're doing all kinds of crazy shit. And they got all the photos of their parties that they go to, and everybody is all sainted out and all of that stuff. And, you see, you got to understand, they know that I'm very, very serious about my faith, and I'm very serious about what I do. And they respect me for it. They understand that. I, on the other hand, cannot understand why they do what they do, and I don't even ask them why. But when a lot of them, they might say, hey, blessings to you. And I'm like, well, I'm not so sure I want to accept your kind of blessing, and we'll laugh about it. But they respect what I do, at least some of them. And the others, I don't really care. I don't give a damn what anybody thinks about me.
Yeah.
I wanted to hit on Sada, my wife. She's from South America, and her family lived in this house that was like 100 years old.
You better stay on her good side, man.
yeah, absolutely. She's she's from Peru, and yes, that I
stay on her good side.
Yeah, it's every day. I'm like, okay, I got to navigate this.
You notice he can't say too much because, like, if she sees it,
I'm like,
she might shrink your head. She might shrink your head.
Totally. So they were raised Catholic. Her mom's very Catholic. She's here. Everybody's in the rest of the house. Anyway, as a kid, she said they would hear her furniture move around her house at night, and they all girls. They all kind of slept in the same bed because they get scared. She'd see the Rolodex flipping, like remember the cards that would spin. And then they noticed the lady that lived above them had voodoo dolls. They kind of matched all of them. And I would joke with her about like, yeah, she had you guys. But she doesn't even really
it's called sympathetic magic, actually.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
How effective is that at drawing something like, say that really happened and then she was like messing with them? It
depends on how good the sorcerer is.
So it could be something really serious, because you always hear about, it's easier to get rid of those things than it is something you're doing personally, inviting it in, versus somebody externally putting it on you. Is that true?
Not
or is
really.
that not?
It depends on how good the sorcerer is.
Jeez.
You know, you got some exorcists that are real good. You got some that, you know, aren't as good at the trade. And there are some sorcerers that are really, really good at what they do. And there are some that, you know, are not. But it all depends on what God allows. It has nothing to do with how good you are. If God allows it, then it'll happen.
Yeah, you know, she's just scared of the topic, you know, because it's scared as a kid. Like that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Nothing more than that. But it was, I find it interesting because I find that stuff, you know, it worth investigating. I just like to find out more about things that are strange and unusual.
Well, I remember when I first started involved, and even before that, I remember my father telling me that my father lived with his grandfather who was blind. He says, I remember in the apartment that we lived in, I remember those chairs in the kitchen sliding around and hearing footsteps. And he said, I never knew what that was. You know, my father was more, you know, along the, unless I see it, I'm not going to believe it. You know, that type, he really, it wasn't until later on in years that I believe he accepted the fact that there could be spirits, because I presented a good enough argument for him, you know, that what you were hearing was probably some kind of human spirit. You know, that was earthbound for some reason. Just stay in a state of grace and go to church on Sunday. And you got nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear. What are you going to fear?
It's a good message. And I guess, yeah, we're out of time, so I don't want to hold you any longer. I just wanted to ask you kind of one last thing, or kind of two-parter. Do you experience stuff still? Are there still things happening in your home where you come into cases? Do you still have to deal with that? And if you were warning people about dabbling in the occult, do you see one thing that kind of is the most common background information you get, like a Ouija board or something, when people are having problems? Do you see one particular thing that stands out from the rest as being a problem?
No, I don't see any one practice being a major problem. Although we touched on it earlier. Going to these abandoned buildings, opening up communication with spirit is a sin. God tells us not to do it. And you don't know what you're communicating with, and you could bring it home to your house. And if you have children, you could turn their lives upside down by doing that. It's a very dangerous thing to do.
Okay.
Yeah, that was always my worry, was bringing something home to kids. You know, without kids, you know, it can haunt you. Battle them out like our buddy. You know, he's battling out that
problem.
Yeah, but with kids, man, that's
as far as things happening in my own house. I think the last thing that happened was in 2016. There was a series of three events that took place in rapid succession. The last being a pair of boots coming out of a closet. And one thing happened. I'm not going to go into it. One thing happened. It didn't happen to me directly, but I was there when it took place. I said, okay, you know, no problem. Something was seen. And I'm like, all right, don't worry about it. It's all right. Just forget it. Then something else happened. You know, a figurine was knocked over. It was actually one of those little gnomes.
Mm.
Yeah. And I've been trying to get that person to get rid of those things for a long time. I said, get those little things out of here. No, they're my gnomes. It fell over. Well, they ended up leaving. And then a pair of boots came out of a closet, which I actually witnessed with my own eyes. So now I'm starting to pay attention. Normally, if something happens, I laugh at it. I'm like, you know, get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm going to do an exorcism. What are you doing? Get out of here. You know? But I started to take notice of this. And I'm thinking, and I'm like, well, why am I having these three situations in rapid succession? Something is definitely trying to get my attention. And then as I thought about it, I said, okay, I know what it is. I filmed the Demon Files the year before, or the 2 years prior, in March. And I did a lot of religious provocation, which I never did before. I did it 3 times in the 30 years that I've been involved in the work. I did it 3 times, and twice it was for Ed Warren. Now, I wrote about this in the book, so you'll understand it when you read it, is that there's no time frame in the spirit world. So me doing religious provocation, they don't have to reveal themselves to me right then and there. They could do it 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road.
Okay.
So what had happened is they were revealing their identity, because I investigated 3 cases for the Demon Files. And I did this religious provocation. And I had these 3 things happen in quick succession. So that was the end of it. It didn't go any further than that. It was done.
For people who don't know what religious provocation is, that's when you're trying to command something to show itself. Is that what it is? I'm
commanding the demonic spirit to manifest or interact with me on a physical level. I don't like doing it. Like I said, I only did it 3 times, and it was twice at Ed Warren's direction. He was the boss. If he said do religious provocation, I did it. He also knew I was in a state of grace. So, I have protection. I didn't like doing it, but I needed to do it for the Demon Files, and that's what I did, and I got some responses from it, but the responses I got were a few years later.
Is there any benefit to that? Because I know you don't like doing it. What would be the benefit to do it?
Well, I had to do an investigation for the show, so I had to alter my investigation. I utilized scientific methods, actually. I was using REM pods. I was using spirit boxes, using grids, and whatever scientific equipment the paranormal community used. I had my investigators were specifically there for that reason. They were supposed to use these methods, and I sort of explain it on the show. And I continue to explain it. I don't like doing religious provocation. I have to get angry. I have to use the emotion of anger. Now, I don't like the devil and his demons to begin with. I've seen too many people suffer because of them, and will continue to suffer. And it's the only time in the Catholic Church that we're permitted to not show mercy to another creature created by God, is during exorcism. The devil is never to be shown mercy. So I have to get angry, and I got to put this angry energy into my religious provocation in order to attract them, because that's what they like. They love that negative energy. And boy, I could get angry. I'm very good at it.
Yeah.
I'm a natural at getting angry, actually. Just ask my ex-wife.
Well, Ralph, I can't tell you how much I appreciate this. I know Tim and I both find it interesting, and it's cool because you're a cop. We shared experience there, and coming on and talking about it. I really do appreciate that. Is there anywhere you want to direct people if they're interested in getting in touch with you to go? You can be specific or general. It's totally up to you.
Well, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. Although I use Twitter to just abuse the opposition. I don't do anything religious on it. I tend to do more of my religious things on Facebook right now. But, when they ban me again and I completely shut it down, I'll be back on Twitter. And that's where I'll start doing my religious stuff. But for now, the best way to get in touch with me is on Facebook.
Okay.
Or send me an email or a private message on Messenger. Those are the best ways to get at me.
Perfect.
I'm not giving anybody my phone number because it won't stop ringing. So,
yeah, it'll never end. It'll never end.
Get me off Facebook.
You can it's so much easier to filter the messages that way. You'll be picking up the phone, all night.
Listen, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you the truth, and you might not like it. So before you make that leap, know that that's the way it's going to be. I'm not gonna give you sugar cookies. I'm going to tell you what the truth is.
Well, we've gotten a few, not very many, but on Instagram, we've gotten a few messages. They were a bit
eyebrow raising.
Yeah. About demons and being possessed, and I got one recently, and I did not like, because I have my family on Instagram too, and this person was liking some photos with my family, but then talking about how her mom made a deal with the devil, and she hasn't been the same since, and has this curse on her, and I'm like, man, and I didn't really think that through. You know, I like to keep my private life, and then my, you know, everything else I do, it has its separate feel. But that wall, I felt like, was disintegrated there, and I'm like, oh man.
Well, listen,
you know?
in this day and age, anybody wants to find somebody in their family, they can do it.
Yeah.
Very easy. While I separate my Facebook from my family, I don't have pictures of my grandsons on there or my daughters. I really don't do it. I keep them separate. You know, there's a lot of wacky people out there. You're not going to want to deal with me, though, if you're threatening my family. You're really not going to have a good go of it, because I'll go out and I will find you at this point. And I'd rather not, but I will. You know,
same.
Not the way I do things, but it's the truth. Let's face it.
Yep. I'm just like, that's a different gear.
People need to get back to God. That's the final message that I got is people need to get back to God and, you know, live your life according to God's will, not your own.
Perfect way to end it, Ralph.
Thanks, Ralph. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Much.
Thanks for having me on.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and our other social media platforms to stay updated with our latest content and join our awesome community. You can find the links right down below in the description, and also feel free to check out these suggested videos popping up right now. We'll see you at the next one. Learn, prepare, survive.